Whilst there might not be a great deal of Swedes out there in the world, let me tell you what, these nature-loving Scandinavians have certainly made their impact. Population-wise, the 10 million people that are living in Sweden is just a small dot in the ocean that is the world. But as we talked about on this channel before, somehow these Swedes managed to get everywhere. They've got their footprint on everything. Whether it's music and entertainment or innovation and technology, there is never a Swede far away, which got me thinking the Swedes are clearly doing something right. And as someone who's been living out here in Sweden now for 2.5 years, I've had quite a good opportunity to get to grips with what it is that the Swedes do so well, and I thought it'd be fun to compile a list of the top 5 things that the rest of the world could perhaps learn from Sweden. And as a side note, this list is by no means exhaustive. There are plenty more things here in Sweden that I think the Swedes are doing pretty well, but that said, I can only talk about so many in a video, so today I've picked out 5 of my favourites that I think the rest of the world should be taking note about. So let's get into it, shall we? Number 1, and the only real place I could start this video today, is parental leave. Yes, and if you're wondering, there's a reason they call it parental leave here in Sweden rather than maternity leave, and the reason for that, of course, is that it took 2 people to bring this baby into the world, so it's time for both of them to play their role in giving it the best start to life. And as someone who's coming in from the outside, I've got to say, I think it's really impressive that the authorities and the government agencies also recognise the role that they've got to play as well, creating the infrastructure and the system to allow both parents the opportunity and the time and the breathing space from their careers to get out, look after their baby, and then come back to work fresh and ready to get back into action again. Yes, because as a couple here in Sweden, you're entitled to 480 days of paid parental leave, which equates to about 16 months of the child's life. And the idea is that you spread that time between you based on what works best for you and your family. You can use it any time from when the child was born all the way up until about their 7th birthday as well, which means, for example, maybe if you've got more kids on the way and you want to save some days and pack them together to get some time as a family when they're a bit older, you can do that too. And whilst I can admit that that's pretty cool on its own, it's not the reason that this one makes my list today. The main reason that I think the rest of the world needs to be listening up and taking note right now is because Sweden have changed the game. Instead of the woman being the one that's expected to disappear from work, forget her professional life, perhaps sacrifice some of her professional career as a result of having a child, now in Sweden, that onus is put back on both parents. Both parents have to make a decision about what's best for their child and their family. Both get the opportunity to look after the child, to get to know them, to get to be part of those important first moments, but neither one has to sacrifice their professional career as well. So what is there not to love? The second thing that I think that we could all be learning from the Swedes is that the winter doesn't have to mean that everything goes on pause. And let's be honest here, Sweden is definitely known for having some pretty extreme weather conditions, especially in the winter. But here in Sweden, they've learned how to adapt to that and to make the most of it. Just because it's dark, cold, perhaps raining or snowing, doesn't mean that all of the memories have to stop, doesn't mean that you just have to sit at home all the time and forget about your life for 6 months, doesn't mean that you have to hibernate, and I think that's something we could all learn from. Yes, because here in Sweden they have learnt to make the most of all of the opportunities that winter offers you. There's even a saying that goes around that says there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothes, and that's really the motto here, because if you're wrapped up warm, you can still go out and about and enjoy the nature, even when it's -20 outside. You can go for a hike, you can take your fika, maybe you can go skiing on a lake somewhere or ice skating. There are endless possibilities, and the Swedes have learned how to monopolise on them. And as a foreigner, this can take some adjusting to when you first arrive here in Sweden. I remember myself thinking it was a little bit odd that when I spoke to Swedish people, it didn't seem to matter what the weather was, but they would always say, "Det är en fin dag idag," which literally means it's a nice day today. And I was thinking, it's not a nice day. It's cloudy, it's dark, it's snowing, it's raining. How can you describe that as a nice day? My perception of weather is totally different. But what I've discovered over the last 2.5 years living here in Sweden is that the Swedes are just prepared to make the best out of the hand that they are dealt. And what I mean by that, of course, is that sometimes the weather isn't the best conditions you would like it to be, but the Swedes have somehow learned how to harness that and how to use it to its full potential. And I think that that's something that we could all learn from. At least us in the UK can definitely learn from that, because usually when it rains or when it's dark and cold, we find reasons to put off our plans, whereas in Sweden, they head straight out into the storm. And it's not just the weather that the Swedes have learned how to take full advantage of, it's also the little things, which leads me on to the third thing on my list today, which is, of course, that the Swedes can teach us all how to make the most out of being at home and making the most of your own house. And I get that this one might sound a little bit odd without some context, so let me fill in the gaps for you guys. In England at least, the home is used in quite a functional way. We're there to eat, we're there to sleep, and we're there to exist. But at every opportunity, we're trying to get out of there. And it might be because in the UK, our houses are a lot smaller, so we can't entertain people in the same way. But in England, when you want to meet a friend, you go out for dinner. When you want to meet your family, you go out for a walk somewhere. You don't invite people to your home in the same way that they do here in Sweden. Yes, in Sweden, they've even coined a term for enjoying the home with their loved ones, which is fredagsmys. It's Friday cozy if you translate it into English, and every Friday night, Swedes are coming together with their families at the end of the week and making the most of being at home together. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we don't like to spend time with our loved ones in the UK, that's definitely not what I'm saying at all, but the chances are we like to go out of the house and do it, whereas the Swedes want to make the most of their own space. And the reason that this one makes my list today is because I think it's quite wholesome, you guys. It's really cool to see that here in Sweden, you're encouraged to make the most out of your own home and really enjoy what it has to offer you. And I'm not saying that we don't like spending time together with our family and our friends in the UK. All I'm saying is that I remember that there's kind of this societal pressure that if you don't do anything at the weekend, or you just sat at home doing things in the house, it's seen as wasted time. It's kind of like you didn't make the most of your free time, you might as well have been at work. Whereas here in Sweden, if you ask your colleagues on Monday morning what they did at the weekend, it's more likely than not that they'll tell you that they were in and around the home. And that's not seen as something that's frowned upon. And I think that's something we could all learn from. And from your home life to your work life, the fourth thing that has to make my list today is the work climate here in Sweden. And this one links quite nicely to that last point I was making about how it's nice to be at home and enjoy time with your loved ones here in Sweden. And you see that reflected in the work life too. You're there to work your hours. At the end of the day, you go home when you're supposed to go home. You can leave early on a Friday and go off to your summer house if you want to. It's something that lots of people do, and it's not necessarily frowned upon in the same way as it might be in other countries, in America, for example. And at the same time, innovation in the workplace is definitely something that's encouraged as a rule here in Sweden. No matter where you go, you're encouraged to really take your own responsibility, take your own autonomy, speak up if you've got ideas, make mistakes as long as you learn from them. It's something that I think we can all learn from. Likewise, if you've got a medical appointment or a dentist appointment here in Sweden, you take it when you need to take it. In the majority of cases, it's not a problem just to disappear for half an hour, take your appointment and come back to work. And of course you can do that in the UK, for example, as well. But I remember that it's kind of assumed that you do that during your own time. So if you've got a dentist appointment that's at 10 o'clock in the morning, for example, well, that's going to be a lunch break now. Whereas it doesn't seem to work the same way in Sweden. And of course there's exceptions, but most employers understand and respect the fact that you've got these things that you need to do, and they trust you just to get on with the work that you've got to do as well. The fifth and final thing that I think we could all be learning from the Swedes is how to make the most of the natural world that's around us. Yes, we've talked about allemansrätten here on this channel before, the right to go out and enjoy the nature around you as long as you don't disturb it, and that really bleeds into everything that the Swedes do here. It's really nice to see that the Swedes want to go outside, they're an outdoorsy bunch, and they want to make the most of the natural world around them. It's quite telling, for example, that there's lots of Swedes that will have a tradition where every winter they will go up into the Swedish mountains and ski, and every summer they'll go hiking somewhere in the Swedish wilderness. And again, I think that's really cool to see, because the rest of us are quite used to going abroad when it comes to holiday time. We want to get away from our everyday, whereas the Swedes have learned how to make the most of it and really enjoy the nature around them. And with that, we've reached the end of this video about the 5 things that the rest of the world could learn from Sweden. I would love to hear what you guys thought down in the comment section down below. If you think there was something else that I should have mentioned in this video and I didn't, let me know. What else could we be learning from Sweden? I would love to hear from you guys. Perhaps if there's enough others that you guys come up with, I'll have to do a follow-up at some point. But in the meantime, like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already. I upload videos twice a week and it would be really cool to have you guys along for the journey. Click that bell if you haven't already, then you'll be the first to know as soon as there's a new video out. And until I'm next here, all I want to say is thanks for watching. I hope you have a really good day, whatever you're up to, and I'll see you again soon. Bye guys.